Hello, my name is Kylee Warner, and in this video I'll be discussing Joseph Kony's The Lord's Resistance Army. Before I move on to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that in this photo, the center man with his arms outstretched is Joseph Kony, and he's surrounded by hundreds of children. The reasoning for this will become evident later on in the slides, and I'll be sure to point it out. Okay, so for the start of this PowerPoint, I just wanted to discuss the LRA's emergence as a group. The precursor to the LRA was the Holy Spirit movement, who was led by Alice Auma. She often went by Alice Laquina because Laquina was the spirit that she claimed to be possessed by. And then after gaining enough supporters in the HSM, Laquina had her supporters march on the NRA, and she told her supporters that with their faith and their belief, the spirits will protect them from the NRA's bullets. So they were easily defeated by the NRA, as they didn't even have bullets or weapons to use against them. Laquina then left. She fled to Kenya to get away from the downfall of her group. This led to the emergence of Joseph Kony. He claimed to be Alice's distant cousin, and he asserted himself into the leadership position in the HSM. However, Kony also introduced a more militaristic element to the LRA, or to the HSM at the time. He then changed the name also to the Lord's Resistance Army. And the Lord's Resistance Armies promotes a radical form of Christianity based on the Ten Commandments. They want to form a Ugandan government that is based on these commandments. And then on the right, I also attached a picture of the commandments, and you can see that it says things like, "Thou shalt not have no gods before me, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, thou honor thy mother and thy father, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, and thou shalt not convert." I just thought that this was actually interesting because the LRA doesn't even follow these 10 commandments that they're trying to get implemented into the Ugandan government, because the LRA certainly kills and steals. The LRA is infamously known for their brutality. They often use rape, torture, and murder as their tactics to achieve their goals. Their goal being the Christian Ugandan government. The most well-known thing that the LRA does is they kidnap children in the dead of night. And this ties back into that initial slide that I talked about, with Joseph Kony in the center with his arms out and surrounded by children. 80% of the LRA is actually children who were kidnapped and brainwashed into servicing the group. So here you can see that his picture, he's kind of like a god to them. He is their leader. He's taken them. These children, when they get taken into the LRA, they either become soldiers, sex slaves, weapon holders, or even gifts to arms dealers in Sudan. And here, while I was doing my research, I found an article that discussed some stories from children that were kidnapped by the LRA. In this first story, it's from Stella, who's age 15, and she says, "We walked and walked, and they made us carry their property that had been looted. At about 6 a.m., they made us stop, and they lined us up in 2 lines, and made us walk between them while they kicked us. On the second day of marching, our legs were swollen. They said, 'Now, what should we do about your legs? You must walk, or do you want us to kill you? It's your choice.' So we kept going. On the third day, a little girl tried to escape, and they made us kill her. They went to collect some big pieces of firewood, then they kicked her and jumped on her, and they made us each beat her at least once with the big pieces of wood. They said, 'You must beat and beat and beat her.' She was bleeding from the mouth, and then she died. Then they made us lie down, and they beat us with 15 strokes each, because they said we had known she would try to escape." This is actually a common thing in the LRA. Children often are abducted and forced to kill other children that attempt to escape or disobey the LRA. They deliberately force children to kill other children. The youngest story that I came across was from William, age 10, and he had to say, "They beat us, then made me carry some radios and carry the commander's gun. It was heavy, and at first I was afraid it would shoot off in my arms, but it was not filled with ammunition. We joined a big group, and we walked very far, and my feet were very swollen. If you said that you were hurting, they would say, 'Shall we give this young boy a rest?' But by a rest, they meant that they would kill you. So if you did not wish to die, you had to say you did not need a rest." The LRA actually isn't really known for their attacks because the, the main thing that they do is kidnap children, like I mentioned. But from lecture, we were able to see that they have done other acts. It says that they've bombed two popular night spots, and the most vivid thing that I remember was that the LRA forced World Food Program volunteers to cook and eat the body of the deceased. Just these types of actions show the brutality of the LRA, but it also shows that they don't really have an agenda or motive because they're not following the 10 Christian commandments that they wanted to implement. And then also on this slide, I attached two images. The one on the bottom and with the red line shows the areas where the LRA is known to operate, and the picture on the top shows various LRA attack sites. Now, this slide talks about Operation Iron Fist, which was the Ugandan attempt to stop the LRA. However, it greatly failed, and it actually ended up with the LRA expanding to areas that they'd never even considered going to before. It just increased the problem and was just a huge failure. The LRA actually don't have very many members that have been captured or taken. There are arrest warrants out for them. However, there's only been one that was captured, Caesar Akalem. He was captured in May 2012 by the UPDF. He was known to be to work with the foreign intelligence and to discuss deals with Sudan. So he was an important kind of liaison for the LRA. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was applying some theories to the LRA. I think the group radicalization theory can greatly be applied to this because, if you recall, the children are kidnapped into the LRA and they are forced to be in this group, and they grow up in this group, and eventually it makes them think that their actions are okay, like the LRA's actions. So they start to become a member of the LRA and eventually become officers within this. And I think that this shows group radicalization theory because of that reason. The other one I wanted to mention quickly was political opportunity theory, which can be applied to this case because the LRA can act and do all of these crimes because Uganda cannot stop them. As we saw in Operation Iron Fist, they attempted to stop the LRA, however, it just led to them spreading to other areas.